Hello and welcome to another episode of the Opportunity Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Elfring, head of marketing over here at Empire Flippers. And today I am talking to Amos, one of the co-founders of Get Swan. So Get Swan, what it does is it takes all the visitors coming to your website and helps you de-anonymize them, which is amazing if you are in the B2B space. It allows you to do a lot of account-based marketing, allows you to do a lot of go-to-market stuff. Very, very cool for all my friends that sell to other businesses. But that's not the main reason I brought Amos onto this podcast. I brought him on because one of his great LinkedIn posts got me super curious, where he's spending over $300,000 a year on his AI stack. And he's building an autonomous AI business, AI first business, with a goal of hitting $30 million ARR with only three co-founders. And they want to get to $10 million ahead. So they're not really looking to hire new employees as they grow this business. So I think this is a very fascinating conversation. We get into what makes an AI agent and what is an automation and why are these two things different. We talk about some like pretty specific use cases that they have at Get Swan and what you can do yourself to kind of learn and make your own AI agents in your own business and try to embrace a more autonomous first style business. So I actually had a ton of questions I wanted to ask Amos. Very interesting guy. I didn't get a chance to ask them all as he had to run for a quicker meeting, but I think you guys will really, really enjoy this podcast. If you've been diving into the trenches of AI like pretty much all of us, then this is a great podcast for you. And Amos has seen some pretty good success even before the age of AI with, I believe he said, two other B2B brands that he helped build and scale. And he has gone the traditional route, and we both laughed a little bit about how that traditional route of VC raising is perhaps not the best path for you. Anyways, enough of me talking. Let's get into it. I think you're going to enjoy this podcast, and I'll see you on the other side. All right. I have Amos Bar Joseph with us today, one of the founders of Get Swan. I'm excited for this podcast, man, because one of your very clickbaity LinkedIn posts hooked me in like, oh, how's he doing this? Which is part of the questions I will ask you. But before we get into the meat of it, for everyone that doesn't know you and doesn't know what Get Swan is, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing?
Awesome, Greg. So excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm, founder and CEO of Swan AI, GetSwan.com. We're building Lovable for go-to-market. It's actually an AI go-to-market engineer that can enable go-to-market teams to turn any go-to-market idea into a live agentic workflow from prompt to pipeline in seconds, so they could scale revenue with intelligence, not headcount. And we're building the first autonomous business, Greg, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that today as well.
Yes. Awesome, man. Well, let's back up a couple things there. For a lot of my audience, they are solo founders or very small teams. So I think what you're trying to do, scaling revenue, not headcount, is very relevant to them. But terms like go-to-market, agentic workflows, let's talk a bit about this. Like define what those mean for my audience.
Yeah. So first of all, when we talk about go-to-market activities, sales and marketing, usually we kind of like at Swan, we're focusing on pipeline generation. So, generating opportunities for the business, generating demand, meetings, signups, all this area, and then trying to convert this demand into sales, into actual revenue. Swan's focus is mainly for like B2B businesses. So if you're selling to other businesses, then that will be straight down our alley. But go-to-market tactics are relevant for if you're in B2C or B2B, both sides of the table.
Yeah, I wanted you to explain that because a lot of my audience can benefit from something like this because a lot of them run marketing agencies, but most of them I wouldn't say are like super versed in like the B2B enterprise lingo that you just used there. I wanted to break it down for them. Awesome, man. Well, I'm sure there's a backstory here. So what were you doing before Get Swan and what sparked the idea for Get Swan? Talk to me a bit about that journey.
Yeah, so I'm a third-time founder. It's not my first rodeo, and built and scaled two B2B startups actually. And I did it based on kind of the old playbook, the old startup / unicorn playbook, where founders raise a big seed round from investors before they even get to product market fit, just based on a couple of logos and a pitch deck. Then they hire a 30-person team before they get to the first $1 million in revenue. and then they try to scale their way, brute forcing, kind of like to the next important threshold, just get to the next round and the next round. And then every time you kind of like hope that another investor will kind of like take your bluff and continue with it. And, I hated it. And I felt like it's so inefficient and so outdated. And with this new company, Swan, I noticed that, look, the concept of AI agents, it's not like AI, there's something, bigger here actually. And I think it's time to rewrite, the playbook of how we scale a business, basically. And so that kind of led to just me and my two co-founders who were with me in my two previous startups to say, you know what, let's try to build a company that scales differently, that scales with intelligence, not with headcount. Let's put a bold vision of trying to get to, enterprise scale with just a super lean team. We call this new model the autonomous business operating system. And, we started documenting it and sharing it on public. And, the market got bonanza about it and was super interested to learn more. And I think that's maybe part of the reason that we're here. And so far, it's been one hell of a ride.
Well, I will say two things. One, your strategy is working because, like I said, it was one of your LinkedIn posts that got me curious to reach out to you. And two, I totally resonate with what you just said there about that traditional, like, go to market, raise money. So we've sold a little bit over 2,000 businesses at this point, mostly solo endeavors, but some are enterprise level. And one thing that always just like amazes me is the entrepreneur who's like, yes, I just raised all this money. And they're like really, really excited, and then they look at like the valuations we give them, like, oh, this is too low. Like, man, these guys gave you money to take away all your equity for way cheaper than the valuation we just like gave you. Like, you were so diluted. Like, so it's always a pet peeve of mine. I always joke VCs take a large portion of your dream for very little money, right?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I feel like, VCs until today were kind of like the gatekeepers
Oh
the
yeah.
startup industry. And so they had the power to promote the narrative that is aligned with their incentives, basically. And that narrative was the unicorn narrative. And that pushed founders to inflate valuation rather than to create value. And so what we're trying to shift here with the autonomous business concept is a model where you focus on value creation rather than valuation inflation. And where you can still take VC money, but you're in the wheels and you control your own destiny, and you don't depend on capital to grow. You're dependent on intelligence.
Yeah. I feel like what you're doing is more than just a go to market thing with Get Swan, is a product market fit, right? Which I think is the actual issue with a lot of the VCs. Like, they throw you all this money, make you expand way beyond before you ever really discover product market fit. And when the money runs out, you realize, ah, shit, I just built this extremely unsustainable machine. Yeah, you got market share, but no profit, right? So I align with you quite heavily there, I feel. Talk to me a bit more about this autonomous business in practical terms. So how is this different from a traditional business like a lean startup or even an AI powered company? Because I think you and I are going to get into a little bit of of a conversation about how people are confusing automation with AI. But talk to me.
Yeah, love that subject. I hope you're going to get to that later
Oh,
on,
we
right?
will. Do not worry.
Awesome, man. So basically, when you look at the traditional enterprise and the scaling dynamics of that type of business, is that the more the company grows, the more it deaccelerates, basically, and the more it becomes inefficient. So scale usually comes with adding more humans to a specific area of challenge, or a scaling challenge, basically. And the more you add humans, the more you add managerial layers, the more you add processes, the more you add approvals, the more you add bureaucracies and meetings and so forth and so on, and the slower you get, basically. And if you look at kind of like the unit of value here, which is the worker within the enterprise, then you look at their productivity. So ARR per employee at these companies, they get lower and lower, and it's super hard for them to justify that contribution because that incremental addition to the entire organization is just so tiny when you add another person, right? But an autonomous business flips that equation, basically. It creates a model where a business can accelerate as it scales. It can accelerate as it can grow because it doesn't add necessarily more humans to scale, it can add more intelligence and look at their own, human employees as leverage points that can multiply rather than grow in an incremental fashion. And so the way that it works is that you have just three functions in an autonomous business. And I hope that we're going to get down into it as well, Greg, here. But you have revenue creator, which is in charge of growing sticky revenue, takes kind of like the role of, the business role from end to end, the entire customer facing life cycle, basically. Then you have the product creator, which is in charge of pushing sticky product usage, basically. And then the innovation comes, you have a third function, which is the agent creator, which their entire role is to help these two functions scale with intelligence, not headcount. And so the agent creator creates AI agents around these functions to support their unique challenges. And so make sure that they can scale indefinitely, basically, with the existing manpower that they have. And so an autonomous business could be three people in terms of like Swan, and we're aiming to get $10 million ARR per employee and $30 million in total. But it can be both like 50-person organization, even 100 people organization. It's not about the number of employees, it's about the architecture that is built for speed of execution and about acceleration.
So it basically boils down to, I feel like three, and maybe I'm misunderstanding this, so feel free to correct me, but it sounds like it boils down to a marketer and a sales guy, and then an operator that is like doing the magic to amplify these two main roles. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, so basically, we're in the business of selling software. These roles are very tailored to the software business. You have sales and marketing is the same thing in an autonomous business. There's a revenue creator, right? So there isn't this artificial division between a person that is in charge of marketing and a person who's in charge of selling, basically. And you can do both of them. I'm a person who creates demand and also converts it. And there's a lot of people who are doing kind of like similar things in the world. And the more we are progressing with the go-to-market domain, the more that these fields are converging, basically. So that's the revenue creator. Then you have the product creator, which is in charge of sticky product usage. It means that it creates the product. Because it's software, there is a need to create the product itself. So the product creator works with AI agents as developers to create the product itself, right? So it's kind of like very niche to a software business in that sense. And if you're in e-commerce or anything else, maybe you need to think a bit different. But what you need to understand is that there's a customer-facing role, then there's a product-oriented role, and then there's like the AI agent-oriented role.
The guy who's creating those is the wizard I was mentioning. But yeah, no, I get it now. I understand what you're saying. So let's talk a little bit about this, because a lot of my audience, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but many of them are building their own softwares and SaaS companies, but a lot more are building their own marketing agencies and e-commerce stores. And I think what you're talking about can be applied across all these business models.
Yeah.
So talk to me a bit about why this isn't just replacing employees with AI. How is this amplifying the value creators you do have, those units you talked about? How does this amplify them? And maybe walk me through a few use cases. So like SaaS, an agency, which they might converge quite a bit, but also like an e-commerce, like a B2C. Walk us through some use cases here.
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, I believe that, maybe as a side note, but I believe that agencies basically are going to experience some golden age in the next few years.
I agree.
It's the age of services companies, basically. So we're entering a very quirky era where if you're a product company, then you're effed because you need to add a layer of services on top of your product to help your customers adopt this weird AI solution you're trying to sell them. But if you're a services company, you can start adding a productization layer of your offering, because now AI could productize a lot of the things that you used to do manually. So product companies are getting a little bit inefficient and slower, and services companies are getting much faster and more kind of like efficient. So it's really interesting to see these dynamics. So if you're building an agency out there, then you should be optimistic about the future of AI and just hop on that train.
One thing I want to add before I let you continue, because I've seen this on LinkedIn with all the doomsayers talking about is the end of the agency world. And I just think that is so delusional, because Dude, you're not gonna have like a Fortune 500 CEO in a Mid-Journey Discord making graphics, right? Like, he's like paying someone for this, right? It's probably a marketing agency or someone in marketing. And I totally agree with you. I think AI is going to change the game for marketing agencies, which is like at scale, they become pretty thin margin businesses. But now I think they're going to have much thicker margins than ever
Exactly.
before as we move into this age of AI. So I actually think this is a huge opportunity for anyone looking to buy an agency for sure. So anyway, I just wanted to double click on that because I think that's
Yeah,
a very important
definitely. And agencies are one of the best cases, becoming an autonomous business.
for
And we're going
sure.
to talk about that question, Greg, that you asked about, replacing versus amplifying humans, and how does the autonomous business model fits within this dispute, long time dispute that we have in social media. What AI is going to replace or empower, right? So the autonomous business is on the empower side, and we are pretty confident that is how kind of like the future of autonomous businesses specifically will unfold. The reason is that when you're architecting for an autonomous business, you don't look at processes and you try to replace these processes with AI. You actually look at your talent stack. You look at your humans within your company and the core value that they bring to the table, and you try to say, how could I turn them into the 100x version of themselves? How could I scale them by building an army of AI agents around them? So we believe that there's always a person behind the wheel. No matter how much an AI agent could act autonomously and perform tasks from end to end, they always quote unquote report to some operator or orchestrator of intelligence. And you need to always build these AI agents with the notion of there's a human at the center, not a process, basically. And if you look at, for example, you look at myself, so I'm a one person go to market department, basically. I do marketing and sales. I create the demand. I convert that demand into meetings. I convert these meetings into revenue, and then I make sure that revenue is successful throughout their journey. And I do it as a one-person team. We already have hundreds of customers, businesses that are using Swan. And to run on that scale, I didn't do it by, creating an army of digital workers that are acting as customer success reps or account executives or things like that. They're just, turning me into the 100x version of myself. So all across these touch points, I can be present and impactful as much as I can, basically. And wherever I feel like it's something that an agent can take care of and I can just, oversee, then that's amazing. But it's always about me looking at that customer journey and trying to help these customers move along.
I love all of that. I see one of the things that caught my attention, and I think we should talk about it now, actually, because it was one of my more burning questions for you. I think the post on LinkedIn you did was something like how we're spending $357,000 a year on AI stuff, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
One, as a fellow marketer, I appreciate anyone using specific numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Good
Mm-hmm.
copywriting trick for all the listeners out there. But talk to me a bit about how that works at Get Swan. So you have three people. You're doing the market demand, the go-to-market stuff, and it sounds like some of the sales meetings. So walk me through, like, first of all, what even makes up that kind of spend on AI? That's a wild spend, right? I'm so curious on how the structure of it all works behind the scenes of Get Swan, how you're doing this to build up Get Swan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I didn't articulate it at the beginning of the conversation, but at Swan, so we're building an autonomous business for just three founders on a mission to get to $10 million ARR per employee, basically. And we're surrounded by these AI agents. I'm a revenue creator, so I have all these AI agents that are empowering me to perform my job better. Then we have the product creator, which is using AI agents to deliver software faster, and we have the agent creator, basically, that powers both of us in terms of our needs to scale with intelligence, not headcount. And it's not about trying to scale in an extremely cheap way, right? It's not about that, right? And we're happy to pay for an AI agent whenever it is much better than just hiring a specific person for a role that is, not scalable. And we can think of support actually as an interesting way to, like, an interesting example of what does that mean, basically, both from, scaling with AI agents and from the cost perspective that you mentioned, Greg, in your question. So, we started scaling. We had dozens of customers early on, and we were flooded with, support tickets. And it started to getting super hectic and draining. And we, product creator and the agent creator were spending a lot of time, resolving issues, basically, and questions and things like that. And so, a regular startup, what they do, a regular business would tend to, okay, let's hire someone who will oversee support. Right. And if you're even like a startup that is built on the unicorn playbook, then you would even hire a manager first, and that manager will manage a team of support reps, etc. Right. So we said, okay, we're trying to scale with intelligence, not headcount. That's not what we do. Let's try to solve it with AI agents. We built Gloria, which is basically an AI agent that lives inside, the Swan interface, basically. And you don't feel like when you ask Gloria, you ask Swan about everything. But now Swan got Gloria's capabilities of answering support tickets. It was actually invisible to the user because the product is a chat interface after all. That was an important note. So you were just chatting with Swan. If you had a question, you could just continue that question during the chat interface. Gloria would step in the back of the scene and would answer that question based on knowledge base that we created for it. But that still counted for like 30% of, these tickets. Would still have a lot of traffic coming. So what we added a layer is that if Gloria doesn't know the answer, she would escalate it internally to us and would say, look, this is a question a user asked. I wasn't able to answer it. Could you answer that? So we added that layer, basically. And now we were able to chat with Gloria and tell her, you know what, tell the user XYZ. She would tell it. And then we added another capability. We said, you know what, document this Q&A in your knowledge base. And so what happened is that we only need to answer every question once. The moment we answer it, it gets documented in that knowledge base, and Laura could answer that based on her own intuition and understanding of that knowledge base. And so what evolved basically is a self-learning support system that takes thousands of support issues and questions and can resolve them autonomously. And that is something that could scale for us indefinitely, basically, just that simple mechanism that we discovered step by step. And from a cost perspective, every ticket resolution costs us, maybe like 50 cents or something like that. But cool. Yeah, of course, spending the time of a founder on that would be so much more, and spending a time of just, hiring someone for that would be much more expensive. And that is something that you can scale indefinitely.
So this is exactly what I was looking for, these concrete examples. First of all, the amount of money you're spending on all this stuff, I think is actually really, really impressive in a good way. So coming from my main background is SEO, and a lot of my SEO friends, they just went to the bottom of the list of what they could do with AI, which is like create like mostly useless blog content with it, right? That's not very good. So I'm really excited to hear people using a more artisanal approach to using AI. With that knowledge base, I'm curious, as it grows and grows, doesn't it start losing its ability to take that context in? Like, how do you handle that? Because that's been so two parts of the question is the context issue as that knowledge base grows. But two, how did you get it to not just lie confidently when it didn't know the answer to a question that came in?
Yeah, definitely. These are two slightly technical questions for the technical curious listeners here. So the first one was about context. So an AI agent has a large language model at the center or the heart of it, right? And we can talk about what does it mean an AI agent and later on right here. But basically, a large language model like ChatGPT, if you're familiar, has what you call a context window, basically. So you can send it a bunch of words, right? It's called tokens in the back of the scenes, but it can send a bunch of words, and there's a limit to how many words you can send to that large language models. And if you send more than, let's say, 10,000 words to that large language model, then it won't see the 10,001 word, basically, right? And so when you build a knowledge base, you can't just all the time tell the AI, look, this is all my knowledge. Look, this is all my knowledge. This is all my knowledge. What has been developed is something that helps with retrieval. called retrieval augmented.
RAG, right?
Yeah, RAG, basically.
Yeah, I always forget what the abbreviation
Exactly.
stands for.
So retrieval augmented generalization, and it's basically about retrieving a relevant piece of information. And there is a technique that helps the AI agent find the most relevant pieces of information within all that knowledge base. So you can scale indefinitely the knowledge base, but you won't hurt the ability of the AI to get only the relevant piece out of it. You just need to improve the way that it searches for that information. And to improve it, you can prove it both in having good documentation. So, to really explain in a good way what do you mean and for which use cases this specific content helps, but also the mechanism which it searches for the right information. These are like the two levers that you have. So this is around, the context window. And the second question, Greg, what was that about? I forgot.
How did you get Gloria not to just lie constantly? She
Having
didn't know
lied.
the answer.
Exactly. Perfect. Thank you for that. So the second problem is called hallucinations, and kind of the professional language. It's not lying; it's
Yes.
hallucinating, and it happens when the AI can suggest things that don't have any factual connection within that context window that it's got presented to it. So I would say, look, this is the information, Gloria, and then Gloria would say like something stupid that doesn't kind of like relate to anything that I told her to say, right? And so the way that you can solve for this is a major issue, and there's like
For sure.
a lot of discussions around it on the internet and different angles. Besides some technical architectures that you can put in and boring stuff from a philosophical standpoint, you can choose to build a system that has bias towards escalation rather than resolution. So if your system has that bias towards resolution, it would say most of the time it will try to answer the question. And if it tries to answer the question most of the times, then there will be some times where it's not answering in the most accurate way. It might be some lies to it or hallucinations to it. But if you built a bias towards escalation, then what you will get is sometimes it will escalate even though it did have the knowledge to answer that specific question on its own. And that is something that is more acceptable. It takes more time on your side of things, but that helps you identify the areas of this, where a lack of confidence basically for the AI to answer, and just to strengthen that specific areas.
And then as you reaffirm the answer to it, it slowly learns like, oh, I don't need to escalate this as much as I thought.
If you actually understand, okay, you just need to affirm it in a way. It will say, okay, maybe there was something missing here, to say like, oh, for these types of questions, this is what you can actually use, to answer them. And then if you have that, very clearly articulated in the knowledge base, then next time will happen, the AI won't escalate.
This is one of the very few use cases in the business world where low confidence is actually a good thing.
Exactly.
Everyone talks about being high confident, but when it comes to AI, being low confident is actually more useful. That's
Actually,
brilliant.
I would argue, Greg, that with AI, you need to always assume that giving it low confidence delivers better results than high confidence.
I've seen some wild things that has come out of the world of AI, and I agree with you. I do want to I know you have a short time with us, and I have a lot of questions, but before I get into more like GitSwan specifically questions, more on your infrastructure, talk to me a bit about the difference between AI and AI agents. Everyone and their mother is starting an AI agency today, but really, when you look at it, it's like an N8N workflow agency, which, hey, that's a great tool. I love it. And I love automation. But talk to me where people are going wrong here, where they keep blurring these definitions.
Yeah, definitely. So the distinction, I feel like, people want to say that they're building AI agents because it's cool. And we kind of like, as marketeers, we understand that maybe the audience will think this is a powerful solution if it's an agent and not like a automation or workflow automation or a regular AI solution. But it's not about something being more powerful or not. It's not about being better. It's just, these are two different things. And we actually like dividing it to make it clear that you have AI automation and you have AI agents. Okay. And I would say, as kind of like a disclaimer, that we have AI automations in the company that drives more impact than most of our AI agents, right? So it's not about impact. again, right? It's just about getting your terms right when you're selling them to your audience or trying to figure out what you need for your business. So basically, the difference between AI automation and AI agent, you can think of it more as like a battle over power between AI and code. Okay. And AI automation, the word automation kind of refers to the code automating some steps, and AI agents is referring to the agency that we're giving the large language model to decide on the steps. And we're going to break it down here for a second. So when we're looking at an AI automation, and you talked about NA10, Greg, it means that there is a workflow, a set of steps that is being taken, and these steps are predetermined, and there's a layer of code that decides all the time what the next step should be. So if we take, for example, the process of, generating a list of leads, qualifying them, and sending them emails, okay? So if we take that workflow and we build an automation around it, in NA10 or like Make or Zapier or something, there's a software layer, a code layer, basically, that says, okay, step one should be to go to a database of leads and get 100 leads, okay? So that will be the first step. Then the step two will be to qualify them. Here, I need AI. Okay, so I will send that list of prospects to a large language model, and that large language model will give me a list back of qualified leads. Okay, then the code will take that list and we'll move it to the next step. Okay, and the next step will be to write a personalized message to them. So it will take these leads and put them again into a large language model that will personalize the message. But the difference here is that code was in charge of these three steps of progressing, these lists of leads from one step to another. And some of these steps required the intervention of AI, basically, to qualify and to personalize. When we look at an AI agent has the agency to decide whatever steps it would like to take at any given point of time. It means that the code is not the one who is deciding when to do what. It is the large language model that is deciding. And so what we do basically is that in an AI agent, we'll get a prompt that would say, look, I want you to find leads right now from the database. The AI agent could technically do whatever it wants. It has all these three steps available to it. It can go to the database, it can personalize, it can qualify, but it chooses to start with the database. So it will choose to start first of all with the database and take these leads out of that database, basically. Then it would be able to, if it did a mistake and you wrote the prompt wrong, maybe it will skip the second step and will go straight to the third step and will just take all the leads without qualifying them and sending them a personalized message, right? So the AI agent has the agency to take whatever steps it think is necessary to complete the task that it was required. And a code has always a predetermined steps that it will always do it in a deterministic way. So that is the kind of the difference between an AI automation, what is driven, the power lies within the code, within the humans, we can think of it like that. And the AI agent, the power lies within the large language model, within the AI itself. And we can talk about the use cases that are relevant for each one of them, where we need an AI automation, where we need an AI agent, or, we can take it to a different direction. Your podcast, your call.
I think this is a good definition. So would you be able to say, so in the example you gave with the database, and then that being the AI going to the database, and then the code being, all right, we got the data, move to the next step. That one step with the AI going in, would you consider that an agent because it has its agency within that step to do that predefined task?
No. So the thing is that when we look at an AI agent, it should have, multiple actions, and it is able to decide autonomously which actions to take. If it does the same thing all the time, then we kind of call it just, prompting. So you just tell something, it gives you back. Tell something, it gives you back, right? It's very simple. Just one instance of interaction, and that's everything you need to do. But an agent has the agency to perform multiple, actions, basically. And it's all about that decision-making process. It's all about that agency to decide whatever it will want to actually make a decision.
I see. So it has to be multiple tasks that it is deciding not only the task that needs to be done, but how to do the task as well.
Exactly. Exactly.
Gotcha. And so what would be your use case for doing that, say, over the more traditional automation flow? Like, what's the benefit of doing it one way versus the other?
Perfect. Yeah. So, and I think that's super relevant for building an agency because you need to understand which use cases you should opt in more for, like simple automations, and where you need more like
Right.
quote unquote complex agents. And we can even give you an example from, how we do it at Swan, but automations are perfect for very simple repetitive tasks. Okay. So if you have the same thing going on, you have like the same trigger that triggers that task, and the output has a very small variance to it. Like it should be relatively the same thing to do, right? Without a lot of different use cases to code for, then this is a great use case for an AI automation. And for example, we have the best AI automation that we have that drives most of the impact within the company, more than AI agents, all of them that we have actually, is that I get like over 300 connection requests on LinkedIn each day because I'm very active on LinkedIn. And so there's a lot of traffic there. And I can't really handle that traffic, but this is great business opportunity to start conversation with hot leads that are interesting to learn more about Swan. So I have an AI automation that always is triggered by a connection request. Its only thing is that it qualifies that connection request based on the ICP criteria that I give it, right? And its only job is to say, is this a hot lead? If yes, send a message, super simple message. If not, just accept the connection request and don't send a message. And it's the same thing over and over again. We don't need an AI agent there because it's very repetitive and it's very simple in that way. When you have tasks that, either the input, like the trigger, could be multiple things, or either the output could be variants of things, then that's when you need that reasoning, that intelligence to understand how to handle the process, how to actually perform it, how to output, the best output. And if you would try to solve it with an AI automation, what you will start seeing is that you have this complex decision trees. If this and that, if this and that, if this and that, if this and that, and this and that. That's what happens when a code needs to predict all the different use cases that could happen and kind of like, explain to the automation, quote unquote, what to do with each kind of like use case. But when you have an AI agent, you could just tell it, how to reason basically. And you can say, if, and I'll give you an example. So an AI agent that we have, which is super powerful AI agent, we call it Ezra. And Ezra helps me prep for all my meetings because I have like a crazy schedule, super back-to-back calls, and I don't have time to understand who am I talking with. So Ezra sends me on Slack the list of meetings that I have with research on it, etc., and I can chat with it and so forth. And Ezra has access to my emails, to my LinkedIn conversations, and to my CRM, and to researching online. Okay. And so if I would have built an automation to solve for that use case of Ezra, I would have needed to say, look, if you identify this is a customer, then this is what I want you to do. If this is a prospect, then this is what I want you to do. If this is a VC, then this is what I want you to do. If all of these try to solve for all of these use cases and create like a massive decision tree. But instead, it has these tools. It understands that if it's a podcast, actually, it doesn't need to go into the CRM, right? It doesn't need to use that tool, right?
I'm hurt. They didn't go into the CRM for me, Amos.
It didn't go into CRM, but it did, and I would actually read it to you here. So it would say, meeting with Gregory Alfring from Empire Flippers to discuss building autonomous businesses. This follows their podcast invitation and LinkedIn connection about Swan's AI automation approach. So it actually found the LinkedIn and the email, and then it searched and say, Empire Flippers operates an online marketplace and brokerage platform for buying and selling established digital businesses, including websites, e-commerce, and SaaS companies. But then it says Empire Flippers also runs the Opportunity podcast, covering online business topics, has launched a side hustle store for smaller business acquisitions and sends regular M&A newsletters. And so it is able to give me more context because it's researched online and they assume this is a podcast, so it needs to rely on online information rather than on, first party CRM information. But if this was a customer, then the entire context that it will look for would be in different places.
Could you tweak Ezra to have a little CTA at the end for you to sell Get Swan with us when you're ready?
Yeah,
Hey
sure,
man,
no worries.
just trying to get my
Let me know.
KPIs up here on this podcast. But that's amazing, man. I really like the differentiation that you're talking about there with automations and agents. And it makes a lot more sense in that way. Basically, automation is great if it's a binary tree or maybe a few variables, but AI agents really come in clutch when it's a lot. I was laughing when you were talking about the hierarchy of trees because in our HubSpot, it takes a while to get someone to convince them to like have trust with us to sell their business, right? Like sometimes several years. So I used to have this like massive workflow, just like all like these if then statements, and if something broke, like, oh my god, where in the tree? So
Definitely, yeah.
definitely resonated with me there.
I think, Greg, just to maybe to close in the kind of the discussion on why it's much more powerful to build agents for complex use cases, it's not only about, just avoiding that decision-making tree. There's actually another super powerful capability that an agent has that automation doesn't, that really kind of like moves the needle in complex use cases. And this is what we call feedback loops. So if you build an agent in a good way, like I mentioned Gloria earlier in the conversation, you can tell Gloria something. Gloria would record that in its knowledge base and would be able to leverage that information for future tasks, right? So an AI agent can very easily evolve with your understanding of the scenarios and the use cases and the workflows that you wanted to handle versus an AI automation that is very rigid. And so to solve it, you need to maybe reverse engineer. You need to think of where the logic falls and how to change it rather than just telling Ezra, look, Ezra, next time that you identify that I have a call with a podcast, I want you to give me some information about their audience. I can just tell Ezra that. And then for future cases, whenever it's a podcast call, she would just tell me information about the audience and the listeners. And that damn simple to iterate and evolve and discover the best, performance for an AI agent in a complex environment.
So I know we're coming close to time. I've two more questions for you that I want to try to sneak in before our little rapid fire section here. But we were talking about building these AI agents. Maybe there's a quick resource. I don't know. If someone wants to go out there and like really build their own Ezra, their own Gloria, like where would you recommend them to like learn or to get started? Like where would you send them?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot, and the biggest misconception about building AI for businesses internally is that it requires AI skills. It doesn't. It doesn't have anything to do with understanding AI, prompt engineering, fine tuning, agents, things like that. You don't need that. I call it, you need like the AI muscle. Basically, the muscle requires something that has been around for years. It's not nothing new, and it's called process automation, right? And you need to understand how to identify a bottleneck that you have today, and then you need to turn to no code tools to try to solve this bottleneck. Okay. And until today, there were like infinite amount of use cases that you could automate with no code, right? If you went to Zapier or Make or NA10, you could do amazing things there to, automate specific processes within your business. Nothing new has changed there, only that, the ceiling for these process automations just went like 100x higher. Right.
Yeah.
So it's only about experimenting. Just start, instead of looking outwards and trying to understand who can teach me to do it and where should I learn about it, look inwards, identify a bottleneck that is simple, right? Start with something small and simple, a bottleneck, and try to solve it with a business automation tool like Zapier or Make or NA10. The more technical you are, the more you could lean towards like NA10. If you're less technical, then Make or Zapier would be a better choice for you. But just throw yourself out there and start iterating on that. If you do need some help, I have a playbook that I've built that really kind of like helps, for beginners to understand how to start building their business into a more autonomous business. Also, I have a digital clone of myself that you can talk to 24/7 that can answer questions about that. So, look for my LinkedIn profile and DM
Your
me. I answer
doppelganger.
everyone. And yeah, so
That's
feel free to
awesome.
reach out.
Yeah, we'll definitely make sure you send me that link to your playbook, and we'll put it in the show notes as well for anyone that wants to check it out. So my other question before we get in the rapid fire section is, there's been a lot of talk about these autonomous companies, like the one man $1 billion company. Like the first part of that question is, do you think that is possible? And also, how does that align with your own goals at Swan here in the next few years?
Yeah, so the one person unicorn, I hate it because it's about valuation inflation, right? So
Our favorite topic.
maybe there's a stupid investor that that wants to evaluate a one person company with $1 billion. I can't speak to other investors' stupidity, and we've seen a lot of different mistakes over the years. People evaluating companies and very high, although they were worth nothing. So I don't believe in that one person unicorn narrative. Can a small team generate a massive outcome in an unprecedented way? Yes. We've seen, WhatsApp been selling for, I don't know, like gazillion billions of dollars with a 50-person team. Instagram had 13-person team and they were over like $1 billion acquired. And there's even a story about Built With, which is a company that sells data for e-commerce actually. And it's a one-person
Yes, we
team
use
that
that. I
generates.
just found that out. I was shocked to hear it,
Mhm.
like how small
Yeah,
their team was. Yeah.
without AI, right?
Yeah, this is before AI. Yeah.
So generating massive outcomes for small teams has been something that has been existed for decades. But with AI, I believe that we will see much more companies operating like that. And I do believe that the autonomous business, it's not about a one-man show, it's not about a three-man show. It's about a different architecture for scale that allows you to generate massive outcomes for lean teams that doesn't have all these management layers and approvals and things like that. They can just take their humans, their talent stack, and turn them into the 100x version of themselves.
I love it. I agree with you. And speaking of stupid investors, we have definitely had those type of buyers. So I mean, I remember during the height of it, there was this PE company that basically put in an offer on another business because they got the hint that another PE company put an offer on that business, and there's like zero due diligence. It's like, what? How did you even raise these tens of millions of dollars if this is how you're going to acquire? Like, let me know who gave you this money. I want to reach out to them. Like, how's this happening? But yeah, I agree. And a lot of the AI companies I see today, a lot of my friends are doing. I tell them like, you either need to grow obscenely fast so you can sell it, or you need to raise a lot of money to like not be obsolete. And so many of them are rappers, So I do feel like a lot of investors are going to feel burned at the end of the popping of the cycle that's coming. Not with like Get Swan. I think what you guys are doing is quite unique, but a lot of the other stuff is definitely just like ChatGPT rappers, right? Okay, man. So rapid fire section. I'm going to ask you three quick questions. You give me three quick answers. What are the best hidden growth opportunities when it comes to AI and automation today?
It's a tough answer, but always, when you have a good idea, switch to the infrastructure of it. So if you're looking for a more sustainable business model and you have a good idea, try to think of what support it would need from an infrastructure perspective. And that's where the money lies right now. Sell, shovels, not gold in a gold rush.
Absolutely, 100%. What tools or resources can people use to help automate their business using AI today?
You have either build versus buy. So, build would be to go to these no code, platforms, and you have Zapier for non-technical, Make for semi-technical, NA10 for more technical. Then you have these AI agent platforms like Relevance AI and Gumloop and things like that. So these are like for the builders. If you're more for buy, then, there are some vendors out there like Get Swan as well that could help you leverage AI agents in the context for your go-to-market, for example. So the opportunities are endless.
I was going to be so mad if you didn't promote yourself in that question. That question is designed for my guests to be promotional. I'm glad you took the bait. All right, hardest question of them all, my friend. What has been the funniest moment for you since working in the B2B world or the AI industry in general?
Funniest moment. Well, it's actually when an AI agent of ours went rogue and offer an unauthorized discount to a customer. But Greg, that is a story for another episode, I believe.
I really enjoyed this conversation, man. Maybe we can bring you back here in a few months to see how you're doing in the $30 million AR goal. For anyone that wants to pick your brain, learn more about Get Swan, where should we send them to connect with you?
Yeah, so visit me on LinkedIn. That's the best place. But I also have a newsletter and a digital clone that we could share later after this episode. So yeah, just go find me out. I answer to every outreach.
I can confirm he did indeed answer to my outreach. So if you want Amos to chat with you, just shoot him a DM on LinkedIn. Well, man, this has been an absolute pleasure. I actually had way more questions to ask, but I know you're running low on time. But thank you for doing this, man. I had a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Greg. It was a pleasure.
There you have it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it got you inspired at all the different things that are happening in this industry. And of course, if you just want to buy a highly profitable business, you can always go to empireflippers.com/marketplace, or maybe you want to make an exit of your highly profitable business, and you could go to empireflippers.com/sell your site. I've been your host, Greg. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a review, give us a like, a follow, share it across social media. Talk to you all soon. See you on the next episode.